chapter 17 tonight. I'm excited about chapter 17. Before we go into the first few verses, I wanted to just real quick go over the Feast of the Lord again. I found this chart. It said something about the church age in the middle, so I put a block over that. But here we have the spring and the fall feasts. And the spring ones, you have Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits that are just boom, 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 right together. And then you count out 50 days from, I believe, your unleavened bread, and you come to Pentecost. So really, this maybe should scoot over this way just a little bit, okay? Because it's not grouped together with those three. And then in the fall, you come around, you have trumpets, atonement, and tabernacles. And again, these are boom, 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 right together. I think you have 10 days in between here and 4 or 5 days in between these. Yeah.
Isn't the Pentecost also about 50 days away from Tishri? I think so.
From here?
From Pentecost is also about 50 days. I know there's
so is it
40,
centered?
So it's really at the center.
Okay, all right, okay.
I
never.
Messiah in the midst of them. I absolutely think that's.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an equal distance between them though. It could
Yeah, I've never counted it afterward. That's interesting.
And then the bookcase 1, 1, 7, 1, and then 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, in Deuteronomy it says 3 times in a year all your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses. And so there's 3 of these where they are commanded to go up to Jerusalem. So you're going to have a big crowd and I know you guys are really familiar. I know most of you are really familiar with this. I'm just kind of covering that again. You'll see why in a sec. Those 3 are unleavened bread, Pentecost, and tabernacles. These are going to be the times when you see big crowds from all over the place in Jerusalem, like Pentecost, where they were speaking in different languages because you had people there from everywhere. Okay. Now, I wanted to back up and review a little bit what we were covering because it's been a bit, and there was a lot of traveling happening. And last time we were talking, or maybe it was a time before, I don't know, Keith had mentioned that these events that we were looking at in chapter 16 were happening during the fall feasts. And he'd even said something about, when the sky's red in the morning, that's one thing, and if it's red at night, but you don't know the signs of the times. And that's when he said, that's the signs of the times. The signs are the Moedim, the appointed times. And so I looked at Michael Rood's chronological gospels where he's kind of dated things, and according to his there's we had him in Capernaum. Remember when there was the hand washing issue, and he made that he said that thing about the father and honoring your father and your mother. We talked about that probably 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, maybe. Okay, that, according to Michael Rood, might have fallen on trumpets. Okay, and we're here. Okay, so in the 10 days between here and here, I wanted you to see how much walking he got done. He's in Capernaum for that, which is, help me out. There it is. Okay, Capernaum. So here we go in the next 10 days. Then he goes to the border of Tyre and Sidon. Not all the way up there, but the border, which I don't know, maybe somewhere in here. And that's when the woman comes up to him and wants him to heal her daughter. And she says the thing about even dogs eat crumbs that fall from the master's table. Okay. Then we go to the Decapolis, which is over here. And we had the story where he fed the 4,000. That's why we were thinking that they were Gentiles, because they were in the region of the Decapolis. Okay. Then he sails across to, I think, Magdala and Migdal, the same thing. I'm kind of guessing that. And that's where he makes the comment about the signs of the times that I was just talking about a couple minutes ago. Then on their way to Bethsaida, right up here, he says the thing about beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. You remember when we talked about that? Okay. Then he goes all the way up here to Caesarea Philippi, and that's where he tells Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." And that's where he makes he says that the gates of hell will not prevail, gates of Hades, and he's standing in front of that cave dedicated to Pan. Okay. So that's where we left off, in Caesarea Philippi up here. Now, we start chapter 17, and now we have the Mount of Transfiguration. And according to Michael Rood's chronology, that might have been Atonement, the Day of Atonement. So it's 10 days, and he's done all this traveling. And now, where is the Mount of Transfiguration? Well, some people say it was Mount Hermon, which meant he would have been traveling like this. Or some people say he went all the way down here to Mount Tabor. So we're going to take a look at...
That's a pretty big difference between one and the other, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to show you a picture of each one, and you'll see how they're different too. So now that we've set the scene, let's start with Matthew 17. Okay, at the end of 6 days, Yeshua took Peter, Yaakov, and his brother Yohanan, and they climbed a high mountain alone. He was changed before their eyes. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. Suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them, and they were speaking with him. Peter responded, and he said to Yeshua, "Master, it is good for us to be here. If it is good in your eyes, let us make 3 Sukkot, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, a cloud of light overshadowed them, and a voice from the midst of the cloud said, "This is my dear Son, in whom I am pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard, they fell on their faces, very afraid. Then they lifted their eyes, but did not see anyone except Yeshua alone. As they came down the mountain, Yeshua commanded them, saying, "Do not tell anyone about the vision until after the Son of Man has risen from the dead." Now, given what we were just talking about with where we are in the fall feasts, what's the most obvious problem with their suggestion to make 3 Sukkot?
I think they were also in the feast, during the feast tabernacles. So
That's coming up. If this is indeed atonement, tabernacles or Sukkot, where they make little temporary shelters, which is what he's proposing they make here, is in 4 or 5 days.
You need to be in Jerusalem.
That's it right there. Did you guys hear what you said?
Yes, they need to be in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so
they were
their
on table is closer.
their idea here, I don't know if they were planning on making a Sukkot and then traveling to Jerusalem. I'm not sure what was going through their mind here. But I thought it, and then he says, listen to him. That's what the voice from heaven says. And I think that as we go through the other pieces in chapter 17, I think that's going to hopefully take on an even deeper meaning. It's not just him saying to them that's not a good idea, but in a bigger sense, listen to him.
Well, it's an interesting point that you make here, because they've obviously got, the way that you're laying out the chronology, they've obviously got Sukkot on the mind. Mm-hmm. I had considered when I started reading this, that they were thinking, let's set up a little shrine to Moses and a little shrine to Elijah and a little shrine to you, and I don't think that's necessarily what they were talking about at all. Since Sukkot is close at hand, they're thinking, hey, these guys are going to need sukkahs. Let us build one for them. It just occurred to me that that's Sukkot on the mind. Moses and Elijah have shown up. They're going to need a sukkah. I no longer think that they were trying to set up a little shrine to Moses and Elijah. But since the chronology was introduced, and that this might be near the time of Sukkot, that makes a whole heck of a lot more sense.
Okay, here are the 2 mountains. This one is Mount Hermon up here. It's the highest mountain in the Middle East. It's got snow on top of it most of the year. That's a big mountain. I don't know if they would have made it to the top if that's the mountain of choice, but there it is. Here's the other one, Mount Tabor. Kind of a mountainette. It's like Camelback Mountain.
As a hillock.
And you can see that there's quite a difference there. And they decided in the 3rd century, a Catholic, somebody, no, it wasn't her, it was some monk or something, decided that this was the place for the and it may have been, but you can see that if you're going to build like a place for people to do a pilgrimage to, it's going to be much easier to build in this location. You're going to get many more visitors. So I can see why this location was preferred, given the plans they had for it, which was to build a shrine to Moses, Jesus, and Elijah. And that's what they did. This is the Basilica of the Transfiguration, or something like that. And it's built on the site of, there were actually 3 chapels there, one for each of them, built during, I think, the Crusades. And then later they built this church over the top of it that kind of covered everything. But when you walk in, you see the mural of the Transfiguration. You can get disciples out here, and there's Moses with his tablets and Elijah over here. And then if you go off in one direction, you've got a little chapel that has the mural of Moses with his commandments. And if you go off to the other side, you've got the other Sukkot for Elijah. And here you've got the 2 altars when he challenged the prophets of Baal and fire came down and consumed. Okay, so they decided, I guess, that was a good idea to build 3 Sukkot, and they went ahead and did it. So the next piece in Matthew, and they're coming down the mountain, they ask him a question. They say, his disciples asked him, saying, how is it that the scholars say Elijah will surely come first? Yeshua answered and said to them, indeed, Elijah will come first and restore everything. But I say to you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, and they dealt with him as they pleased. So too the Son of Man will suffer by their hand. Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them about John the Baptist. So I think that they probably found this more puzzling than we do, just like they found the idea of the Messiah coming twice puzzling, and now we understand there's a first and a second. I think that helps us understand that Elijah will come and Elijah has already come can coexist in this statement. That it's not such a riddle for us. That he did come, he will come to say both. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But first, I wanted to hit on Elijah, just a review of Elijah. And I think, are all of you pretty familiar with Elijah? The stories? Okay. So that was during the reign of Ahab and Jezebel was a horrible person, and she brought in the Baal and the Asherah, and let's see, he's the guy who, we talked about when he challenged the prophets of Baal and the Asherah, and just to bring it to the front of your mind, when he set up the altar, you remember what he did right before the fire came down from heaven? He had something done to his altar that poured water over it, lots of water over it.
Not soaked it, set there.
Right, and then the fire came down.
Water too.
Yes, a trough around it, yeah. Do you remember when Ahaziah, which I think was Ahab's son, sent some men to find him? Do you remember what happened to those men? They were sent in 3 sets. There was a set of 50. Fire came down, okay. They said another set of 50, and
The third one was spared.
the third one, yeah, he said, please, I know what you're about to do. Okay, and then he didn't die. He was
Transfigured.
taken up in a fiery chariot. Okay, so that's our Elijah. Now, let's look at some similarities between Elijah and John the Baptist. Both wore a garment of hair with a leather belt. I think there's a verse in the beginning of 2 Kings where they said, I saw a prophet out there. Well, what did he look like? Well, he was wearing a hairy garment and a leather belt. Oh, that was Elijah. Okay, so he's described wearing the same thing. Okay, both were men of the wilderness. Elijah was fed by ravens before he went to the widow. Okay, both ministered in the area near the Jordan. Okay, both pronounced judgment on those who did not repent. They both kind of had the same message, repent. Both denounced the wicked wife of the king. Okay, John, you had Herodias and Herod, and Herodias was a nasty person. Elijah dealt with Jezebel and Ahab. Both had kings that were weaker than their wives. Remember the story about the vineyard where Ahab was pouting, and so Jezebel passed, yes, and took care of that situation for him. And Jezebel was the one who said after he killed the prophets of Baal and Asherah, the same will happen to you by tomorrow. She was the one who pronounced death on Elijah. And then, of course, it was the dance and the wife of Herod asking for the head of John the Baptist. And both had a death sentence pronounced by the king's wife. Now, Elijah baptized the sacrifice with water before calling down fire from heaven. John baptized those who were willing to sacrifice themselves symbolically on the altar prior to the baptism of fire from heaven. He said, I baptize you with water. One will come baptize you fire.
Holy Spirit,
Okay.
fire.
And the amount of water that he used equaled 12. It was like
It was
like
4
times
3 times, yeah, 3 times 4,
like
yeah.
12 tribes.
Uh-huh. Elijah means Yah is God, and he was succeeded by Elisha, which means God is my salvation. Yohanan means God is gracious, and he was succeeded by Yeshua, which means salvation. Okay, so we see that spirit of Elijah. There's so many things that mirror Elijah here. And I think we need to be real aware of what those two had in common, because Elijah will come again. So we want to recognize that when we see it again. Okay, so we come back here, and his disciples ask him, how is it scholars say this? And he says, well, he will come first, and he's already come. And so I wanted to look at, actually, first what I wanted to do, I wanted to take a little side trip here for just a second and introduce an idea. We were watching Forrest Gump the other night, 2 nights ago. You know how the movie starts off with that feather floating around, and then it lands right at his feet, and he puts it in the Curious George book. And then at the end, when he puts his little boy on the bus, the feather has fallen out of the book at his feet, and then a breeze picks it up and carries it off. And there's something, I think that little visual to start and end the movie, there's a quote that he says in there that I think that visual is trying to, or the idea that is trying to represent visually. And that is, he says, let me think if I can. He says, I don't know who's right. My mom, who says everyone has a destiny, or Lieutenant Dan, who seems to think we're all just floating around on a breeze. He says, but I think it might be a little of both. And, you know, we struggle with this too when we think about God's will, and that, you know, does he have everything planned out and whatever's going to happen to me is going to happen? Where does free will fit into that? And you know, we have people that ask us about that. That's like a big conundrum, to try and wrap your head around my free will and God's will and it happening. And I wanted to give this a little analogy for that way, or God's will, and how this might be both, like Forrest said, a little bit, kind of.
Good analogy.
Okay, so we're trying to get from point A to point B here. Point Aleph to point Tav I used, because we're going to use the Hebrew. So here's our little sheep. And in the beginning, this way it's real clear. It's real easy to stay in between Aleph and Tav. Okay, the only thing he has to do is don't eat from the tree. Okay, but he chooses to eat from the tree. And now there's separation from God. And now restoration, getting everything back the way it was, it's a long way off. And there is a way, and this is going to happen. This restoration, it's inevitable. He's going to do that. It doesn't matter what we do in between. This is going to happen, one way or another. Okay?
Easy or hard.
Right. there's all these obstacles in the way, and there's all these different paths that our sheep can choose. There's the straight way, and then there's all these distractions. And so our sheep takes off. Okay, and now he's walking his crooked little path. And every once in a while, our sheep will cross with the straight way. And he comes through that fork in the road. Go straight or continue wandering. And I know that in the history of our people, this happens all the time. It has happened all the time. But I just wanted to pick a couple of times when this has clearly happened to illustrate something. I think one of those times was clearly the 12 spies. They were right there. They could have taken the land. He said, go in there, I'm going to help you defeat them. But when the 10 spies came back with a bad report, they chose poorly. And so at that point, our little sheep goes wandering off, literally wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And so much time goes by, and our sheep, I'm sure, has crossed the line in other places. But let's use another event for an example where we've now come to another fork in the road where the straight way is right there. And we even have a guy who's saying, clear the way. Let's take the straight path. We've got the kingdom right here, restoration. It's at hand. But he's rejected. And once John is rejected, Yeshua knows he's next. And who will be rejected after Yeshua? His disciples. Okay, it's a pattern. It's going to follow. This is the path. Because this didn't happen, now our sheep is off wandering again. Now, he's going to come across this line again up here, and I think we're getting close to that. But I have a feeling that these points where our wandering sheep comes close to that line or crosses that line, that's where you have this real concentration of prophecy. The way things are when that choice is made available. I think those are pivotal moments. And that, you might say, well, what if Israel had decided to just go in to the land? What would have happened then? This still would have happened. I don't know how. I don't know what all of that would have looked like, but this would still have happened. This will happen, no matter what. But I think sometimes prophecy might be vague because he's doing both. He's operating with a crooked wandering sheep and his way and getting us there regardless. So, and you're going to see this vagueness of prophecy contribute to the misunderstanding of the scholars when we come back to our little Elijah verse in just a second. This intersection we have coming up real soon, there's a lot of different theories about what's going to happen there. Is it pre-trib? Is it post-trib? Is it 7-year tribulation? Is it a 3.5-year tribulation? I've heard a year or less worth of tribulation. What if it's written in such a way it's not real clear because all those possibilities are
Still possible.
open? What if our decisions are determining how easy the path is in this area, or hard? So I think our decisions really matter. I think we see that because when you say that, when you've got the thinking that we kind of get marinated in that what I do doesn't matter. Well, that guy sitting in jail that murdered all those people, he can just accept Jesus at the end and go to heaven. So it really doesn't matter what I do then, I think is the conclusion people come to in their heart. It doesn't matter what I do.
It does matter because of consequences.
It does matter. Yes, it does. And so as we come closer to this, I want you to keep in mind that it matters, and that also we don't want to make the mistake. We're going to make it. There's nothing we can do about it.
We want to do our best.
We want to try to strip as many of our assumptions out of our minds as possible, because I think the reason why you have John rejected and Yeshua rejected is because they had a bunch of assumptions about what would happen when the Messiah came, and when he didn't meet those expectations, there was rejection. And then you had a small group of people who still had assumptions. He still was correcting a lot of assumptions, and we've seen that in Matthew with the disciples. Their assumption that he'd want them to build a Sukkot up on that mountain. No, listen to my son, he says. And let's do that. I'm telling you right now, every single one of us in here has assumptions that we don't even know are assumptions. Like this picture, for instance. That he's coming from heaven on the clouds. And we look at this picture and say, yeah, that's what I picture in my head. He's coming on a white horse from heaven in the clouds. Yeah, that describes it right there. But you've assumed that. What does it say? Listen to him. Look at the exact words for what it says. Because there might be something that looks different from this. That's still a possibility. And I don't want us to see him coming and go, oh, no, that's not him. That's not what it looked like in my picture, in my head. So let's do that. And though it's the assumptions you don't even know about. Okay? You don't even know you have them yet.
Until you find out what you thought was wrong, then your assumptions is
Yeah. We're not going to know. I don't think we're going to know until we look at it in the rearview mirror and we go, that totally lines up. He totally called this from the beginning. He knew exactly. And I think that that's what it's there for. It's that you've been looking at this whole time. You didn't understand it. Now you look in the rearview mirror and it makes perfect sense. And you know how awesome I am that I could describe it for you like that.
And that's crazy for you even saying that, because this is what we've been talking about at our house. Even on the way over here, Mike said the same thing. And then he says, I told you these things so that when it happens, you will believe. So, yeah, it's that weird view thing, just like you said.
I was reading in Exodus this week, and the whole scene with the burning bush and Moses saying, you're not the guy, and he says, well, here's the sign when you come and worship and serve me on this mountain, right? Well, that's all after the whole Exodus and all the things that he has to do. It's all after the fact.
Mm-hmm. And there was somebody brought up, I won't say exactly where, but it was something we were watching, and it was about the coming on the clouds, coming with the clouds. I need to look at what it says. I need to listen to the sun, exactly what it says. Here I am, doing the same thing I was just telling you. It's something about coming with the clouds, that the heavens were open, coming with the clouds.
Coming in the clouds of glory.
Yes, but and we think, okay, he's got it out of the sky, like the aliens invaded in V, okay, clouds and sort of coming out of the sky. But if I were some Bedouin out in I don't know, the Jordan and northern Saudi Arabia a few thousand years ago, and I saw this huge group of people, and here they're walking towards me, and they're following this cloud, okay? It's the Israelites following the crowd, and they're coming towards me. I would say, I saw a huge group of people coming with a cloud. Yeah. They weren't descending out of the sky. They were following a cloud. So there are other possibilities for the things that we just think are it's so clear. Maybe it's not.
And also, the clouds are also a metaphor for glory in Scripture. So it could not even be something that we physically see.
As a cloud.
It's glory.
Yeah. So keep your mind open to the possibilities for how this could play out. But whatever happens, what is written will perfectly describe it. Great.
So I think it helps to be in a group too, so you can bounce off your understanding, and you can share. You can either enlighten the others, or you can be enlightened. You could be wrong. And as you said, all we have to do is just be open and talk about it, and it doesn't matter who the idea comes from, as long as it's from the scriptures. Then because we're here to find the truth. I mean, it's not because to support your position, which you could be wrong. Then Jesus said it's only the truth that sets us free. So you might have won, you might have proven your position, but you're wrong. That doesn't bring you anything in eternity. So it's really important to just look for what is true. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
Sometimes the biggest favor somebody can do is challenge us and make us go back and look at what the words say, because that's when our assumptions are exposed to ourselves.
Right.
And then we can, maybe I need to rethink that, or just leave it open.
I think that's how we all got here too.
Yeah.
Because we heard somebody who challenged our assumptions.
Yeah.
And we went to the Word and we looked into it. And
Yeah.
that challenge actually opened up our eyes to see that we were wrong.
Right.
I was just gonna say that I think that it's interesting that Peter's assumption is, in the previous chapter, it talks about, some of you will see the kingdom of
Glory.
heaven, right?
Mhm.
So he's like, this is it, right?
Yeah.
Not just like we're gonna celebrate tabernacles here. I imagine that if he saw this vision of these three men, that he was like, the time is now, let's do this,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it's not like he even knew what Moses and Elijah looked like, right? He'd
Yeah.
never seen them before, but he knew it
Yeah.
was them. So something in the spirit was telling him, hey, this is important.
Yeah.
But he just kind of made some.
Jumps.
I always was wondering that, how indeed did they know? Oh, that's Moses.
Well, he was carrying
That's
the camel.
Elisha.
I saw that picture in that little temple.
That's what I picked up on it when I read is that don't tell anybody about this vision, he says. I'm like, oh, it was a vision. And I think about like dreams I've had where I just knew somebody was somebody. You know what I mean? So if it's a vision, you just, okay, I know that that's Messiah.
Correct.
Even though I've never seen Messiah in my dream, I know.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah,
it's
like
that.
Jesus said about Lazarus and the rich man. How did the rich man know that was Abraham?
By the Spirit.
So it's like that. It's, yeah. It is.
Pretty neat.
You retain your personality after you die.
And a beard.
Wouldn't it be nice to die young then instead of living too long?
You didn't have any wisdom,
How your body
I
anyways,
think. Hopefully.
new could be new.
So I wanted to do some backtracking through the Old Testament where the scholars got this idea that Elijah was going to come first and restore all things. In John, the book of John, they asked John the Baptist, they want to know who he is. Are you the Messiah? He says, no. Who are you? Are you Elijah? He says, I am not. They said, are you the prophet? He answered, no. And they said, well, we got to have an answer for the guys back in Jerusalem. And this is what he says. These are his words. Listen to his exact words here. I am a voice calling in the wilderness, clear the way of Hashem. Clear the way of Hashem. This is from Isaiah 40, and it's a chapter about Judah being released from captivity. Oh, what could have been, but it wasn't. Not at this time. Clear the way of Hashem. Now, in Malachi, we're going to go there for a couple references to this too. This is a book about Malachi's rebuking the people for their neglect of the true worship of Yahweh and calling them to repentance. Sound familiar? Okay, the book is broken up into sections. His compassion, this is of course from the New American Standard where everything has to start with the same letter. Compassion, complying, conduct. You know, that fancy little trick that people in the second part here, God's complaint against Israel, he refers to this God, to my messenger. Okay, we're going to take a look at that first. And towards the end of the book, at very end of the book, when he's describing the nature of his judgment, then he refers to Elijah. And the way this is written, you might have a tendency to try and roll the messenger in with Elijah and think maybe that's the same thing and they're going to accomplish the same thing. But let's take a look at it. The first one in Malachi chapter 3, that one that's before the end, he says, behold, I'm going to send my messenger and he will clear the way before me. The Lord who you seek will suddenly come into his temple, and the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts. We can see this check happened, right?
We can assume that.
Okay. And this is what, when John the Baptist was asked, who are you? This is what he said. I'm a voice calling in the wilderness. Clear the way before me. Clear the way of Hashem. Okay, so I think this is our role fulfilled by John the Baptist. Elijah has already come. They did not recognize him, and they knew he was talking about John the Baptist. Look at that. Let's look at that other Malachi reference where he actually uses the name of Elijah. He says, behold, I'm going to send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. And he will restore the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the land with a curse. Have you noticed that this whole time I've been putting fathers, sons, and children in red? It keeps popping up through chapter 17. I just wanted you to tuck that away for a little bit later, and we'll go with the father-son theme. In the meantime, notice he says, restore the hearts of the fathers to their children. Okay. The second half of what Yeshua's answer was when they asked about Elijah, he said Elijah will come first and restore everything. This is yet to happen. He will come and restore. It's not what's taking place right here in this book. In fact, in Matthew chapter 10, he even says, I have come to separate a man from his father and a daughter from his mother. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. Okay, that's not what's going on at this time. So we've got that my messenger clear the way is what's happening. It's the Elijah came to restore. That's not happening at this time. You follow? You have this look. Tracy.
I always have that.
She always has that.
Okay. All right.
It's like a permanent.
Maybe I've
Explain yourself. Elaborate a little bit more. What do you mean by this?
Now she's got to think deep.
that Elijah will come first and restore is not happening right now. It's yet to. Will come.
Well,
Later.
It hasn't happened.
That Elijah has already come and they didn't recognize him.
John the Baptist.
That's what's happened. He came as a messenger saying, clear the way. So then when you look at Malachi, my messenger, clear the way. That piece has happened. It's the Elijah, restore the hearts of their fathers and children.
Hasn't happened.
Right.
I see. Okay.
That's the coming part. So Cain will come.
Okay.
We've got this dual thing going on. And what if that happens again? You know, what if what happens here at the end of the age has like a double part? You know, buckle your seatbelts. Be ready for that kind of thing.
How would you characterize what that might look like? I'm just hypothesize for a moment.
I don't want to throw a
I'm not telling you to throw out
stinky
some
fish
predictions or
out there.
something. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying explain yourself in such a way that I can understand what you're
It's a picture.
potentially proposing.
That video that we watched about the difference between presence and coming.
Paint us a picture.
Paint a picture. Tell me what you mean by that.
I haven't researched that
No,
enough to
no,
really want to
don't
bring
go-
it up.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
But tell me. What
Don't
you
go
mean-
there. That's all the.
No, I would just say. I mean, talk about what.
What could that
okay,
possibly
so you're
mean?
talking about a dual role here, where the prophecy is being misinterpreted because they're running clear the way, restoration.
Okay.
You said you Elijah the prophet.
Okay, I can say this in a way that won't. That when he comes back, I think we kind of get this idea in our heads that once he shows up in the sky, it's
All
over. And that every single one of us that believes on him has the exact same destination with the exact same path, and we endure the same things. And I don't think, I'm thinking that's too simplistic. That him showing up in the sky doesn't necessarily mean whew, it's over. It might mean
It's the beginning.
it's time to get, yeah.
It's just getting started.
It's just getting started, and that there's, you know, in terms of us being with him, that it's not, you know, just everybody's there.
Yeah.
That there's different ways that's going to maybe play out.
Okay.
Tracy.
Another hypothesis that I've had is, you know, the Jewish people, you know, their Passovers, and they set up table or a seat for Elijah because they're waiting for him to come. And likewise, the Jewish people are waiting for Ephraim to return, because this is what the scriptures are about, is the returning of Ephraim to the tribe of Judah and the restoration of all things, restoration of the 12 tribes. could it be that they're not looking for you and I as the spirit of Elijah making him straight the path of Messiah, because they're not looking, they don't know Messiah yet, you know, so there's another possibility that, you know, maybe they're not looking for us, you know.
They're looking in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
They're looking at the sky when they should be looking at the ground.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that grew up in some form or another of religious upbringing have a get out of jail free card. They think in their mind that, oh, the rapture or however's coming, whatever happens in those end times. Oh, I'm out, I'm done, it's easy flowing now, I'm going to be on a low cloud, I'm, you know, living this little luxurious place. Well, who knows if that's going to happen? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe all the training that you've had down here since birth to death, or whatever death might mean when he comes back, is the beginning of your, what I trained for my entire life to do there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think
I mean, I can't say that, and it's the same way with hierarchy here. Everybody doesn't do the same job. God loves us all exactly the same, but there's people with a hierarchy in their work and what they do. I think when he sets his kingdom up, it's going to be the same thing. Why did he set it up like that in the beginning? Not so we can wipe it out and go, oh, we're going to do this thing now. Everybody does the same job. Everybody has the same title. Everybody has the same house. Everybody looks the same. Why?
no.
That's not what he did in the past.
Yeah.
You can't say that the Bible from the beginning to end doesn't tell a story of his kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Old Testament, New Testament, and everything in between. That's his story. Why would he wipe that all out and make a different picture? Doesn't even make sense logically.
I think he would.
I don't think he would.
And then we were all rewarded according to our works, and that's
Yes.
all throughout Scripture. Rewarded or condemned or punished or whatever according to our works. And some are given authority over many things, and some
Correct.
over few things. So it's like
And
whatever that means.
but
we're not-
whatever that means, yeah, but that doesn't, and some people would take that wrong, like, oh God, I'm not that good. I'm not going to be ruling anybody. Well,
Well, you
maybe.
should have that idea. I think
Well,
that's a good
right.
humble thing.
So, yeah.
No, I understand, but you don't want to feel down on yourself like,
No,
oh,
you-
God created me just to be a
Well,
basic
there's-
house cleaner.
You know,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
there's an attitude of humility, and then there's being
Right.
beat down by Satan, and then there's,
Yeah.
you know, having an inappropriate view.
But I think an attitude of this is who I am, this is what God created me to be, and I accept my role
Yeah.
is the attitude we have to have here
The
and
power.
wherever there is.
That's what it's in acting. There are no small roles, just small actors. So it's like whatever role you're given is what you
That's the
embrace it.
thing.
It's the biggest job in the world.
That's
Right,
the stage.
that's why,
And you've been prepped and created perfectly for it.
right, that's
So-
why God did not make the whole body all brains,
No.
all eyes.
Yes.
Every part is
Everybody has gifts,
tiniest,
talents, and
yes,
abilities. Yes.
has a very
The
important
pinky toe
role.
keeps you from falling over.
That's
Right?
right.
Everybody's got that
That's
role.
right. All right, cool digression.
If you're done with that, there's also some thought here. A lot of people have been saying, "Oh, Jesus did not claim to be God," but I think there's one place that he claims makes indirect claim that he's God, because that's messianic. Everybody knows it's a messianic scripture verse. And in the Bible, the Messiah has been given a divine nature. And so he's saying, if that was Elijah, I am, that was Elijah, then I am the divine, the Hashem that he was supposed to.
Yeah,
Hear
the
all
light
time.
for.
So he was playing.
Yeah, he
one
doesn't
of those
use the
very-
exact words, but he goes
Right.
right up
He
to
never
it.
says I am God. But he
No.
does.
But
He-
they understood.
says it in other
because
ways,
they
yeah, I know.
stoned him and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
But
He just says the Father and I are one.
Yeah, yeah.
You've seen the
he
Father, you've
comes-
seen me.
Yeah, he comes as close as you can possibly come.
He
saying, I am
says
God, but-
he's God in the most humble way, without saying I am.
It's
Yeah.
very clear to his enemies.
Well, I think many of them picked up on it. That's why they
Right.
tried to stone him several times.
Right.
They knew what he was
What?
saying, but he didn't come right out and say it.
Right.
You know?
And when you think about it, we are all supposed to. We're supposed to see the Father in all of us. That's our delight is to glorify Him. So I think He's just trying to teach us that concept.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's go on to the next thing that happened. So we've had the Mount of Transfiguration. We had their question about Elijah. And now we have this happen when he gets down the mountain. As they came to the crowd of people, a man approached him and got down on his knees across from him. He said, "My master, please have compassion on my son because he is struck by the moon." Your translation might say that he's a lunatic. Luna, that's where they get. He is struck by the moon and his illness is severe. Often he falls into the fire and often into the midst of the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they were not able to heal him. Yeshua answered and said, "Alas, O crooked generation that lacks faith, how long will I be with you? How long will I bear you? Bring him here to me." Yeshua reprimanded the demon and it left him, and the young man was healed from that hour. The disciples approached Yeshua when he was alone, and they said, "Why were we not able to drive it out?" Yeshua said to them, "It is because of the lack in your faith. For amen, I say to you, if you have faith like a mustard seed, and you tell this mountain, 'Be moved from here to there,' it will be moved from its place. There is nothing that will be impossible for you." But this type only comes out with prayer and fasting. As they passed through the land of the Galilee, Yeshua said to them, "The Son of Man will ultimately be handed over to men. They will kill him, but on the third day he will surely rise." And they became very upset. So there's a couple parts in here I wanted to explore. But the first was this, again, an Old Testament reference here. "Alas, O crooked generation that lacks faith." That's from Deuteronomy 32, 5 and 6. "They have acted corruptly toward him. They are not his children because of their defect, but are a perverse and crooked generation." And this part's for fun later. Put this in your pocket. Deuteronomy 32, 5 and 6. "Do you thus repay the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is not he your father who has bought you?" And I put a little shekel there for buying. You'll see why later. We're going to have fun with Hebrew later. "He has made you and established you." Okay, I want to propose a theory, and then I want to go a little bit deeper into these stories. What time is it?
It's 8:15.
Okay, all right. That this incident with the father and his son are indicative of a much bigger picture. Okay? And we know that's true of everything that happens and is recorded, and that he does. That the children's broken relationship with the father can only be fixed by Yeshua. His disciples weren't able to fix this problem. Only he was. And I think this is a picture of this generation. They are not his children. Is he not your father who bought you? Okay, I think that's maybe why he does that all the time, where he'll quote a piece of the Old Testament, and then if you look at the stuff around it, it gives you a little more insight into what he was saying about that event where he tossed that piece out. Okay, so you have this father and son relationship that, the son has got a huge problem, and only Yeshua could fix the problem with the children. The other piece of this that I wanted to look at, and I wanted him here, and I did this part.
He was checking something.
Okay.
Checking some.
All right. Is this thing here, because this doesn't make sense, really. If you look at it, it doesn't make sense. He says, "It is because of the lack in your faith." And then he says the thing about the mustard seed in the mountain. So let's look at that close. Okay. Why were we not able to drive it out? It's because of your lack of faith. For I tell you, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you could move this mountain. Does it make sense to you, or does there seem to be a problem with the logic there? Keith.
Well, otherwise, their faith isn't even the size of a mustard seed. It's nothing.
I know. And they've been casting out demons all over the place up till now, so I don't think it was a faith problem.
And then he tells them that they need fasting and prayer.
Yeah.
Right, so it doesn't seem to correlate to
No.
not having
I think part of it is because he's illustrating a problem that can only be solved by him, and that is this rejection that he's suffering, and that's why he brings up the thing about, I'm going to die, and after 3 days, and, he keeps alluding to, that's going to happen. This thing is going to happen to me. And he knows, because of what's happened to John the Baptist, where this is all headed. This is not going to end well. Well.
It's going to end the best way it's supposed to.
Yeah. So would this make more sense if I did this? Ready? Is it because of the lack of your faith? No. for if you had faith like a mustard seed, you could move a mountain from here to there. But this type only comes out with prayer and fasting.
So in other words, you have to fast and pray before you can cast out demons.
No, I don't think that's
No, they'll pounce on you and beat your eyeballs
No,
out.
that's
No.
not what it is.
I just wanted to throw that out there as a. Does anybody want to say anything about that, or
Well,
I'm not
it
saying
certainly
that.
changes things, but how would you interpret that?
Oh,
I think it makes
So-
more sense as a question rather than a statement, right?
Yeah.
right. So
Keith.
yeah, you turned. I like the way you changed it because it translates better that he's not. He's with them, and he's actually saying, I'm not doubting your faith.
Right.
You just didn't do the prayer and fasting.
Well, then who's he talking to when he says, "Oh, faithless generation"? Right before that, he's telling somebody they're faithless. And
If you look at the account in another book, he does imply that the father.
He's talking to the Father. when he
Yeah.
mentions him.
Well, and then that he says the generation is faithless, which. But I'm not sure that he was accusing the disciples of being
right, because it's a
faithless.
perverted generation, and I
Yeah.
don't think he addressed the
Certainly not
disciples.
talking
Yeah.
about the disciples, at least I hope not. But
Yeah.
I think,
Here,
you
I
know,
hope
he
not.
seems to be saying, you know, says even if, you know, do we think that they don't even have faith like a mustard seed?
They have been doing many things that in regards to faith.
They have, and I think that
Lots.
they have greater
I mean,
faith
surely
like
they
a
didn't move a
mustard
mountain.
seed.
Saw with Moses and Elijah.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to have some faith, and I think that's why you put that there, is because he's not implying that the disciples have no faith, and that's why they couldn't drive out this demon. But because even if you had a little bit of faith, you could do it. But that's not the issue here. Is that?
Yeah, I don't think that that's.
This is a special.
I don't think
case
it was
which is
intended that they.
indicative of
Yeah.
Something else.
That's.
I'm gonna show
Yeah,
you
you missed
something
that
through
slide.
this.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
they
Yeah.
did leave him even before crucifixion.
They did.
Yeah.
Again, they had no faith in him. They didn't follow him.
I think we were
They had
afraid.
enough faith to go and cast out a bunch of demons and
Yeah.
heal people
How
and
many
raise people
does
from the
that
dead.
take?
But then when he dies and it comes to their lives being threatened, they ran away.
So,
But sometimes you have faith for some things and no faith for other
That's
things.
true. But
And
I
that-
think we can
Temporary.
certainly say that they have faith the size of a mustard seed.
And that was all prophetic too. Smite the shepherd, and the sheep would be
Absolutely.
scattered. And then when they came to
Yeah.
arrest him, he said, "If you're looking for me, let these go." So it's
Yeah.
He needed those disciples to survive.
Yeah.
and there was never a question mark in the Greek.
I don't know what
Language.
other
There's no-
punctuation
there's
was.
no
No, there's no
Yeah.
punctuation.
Yeah.
But I was just looking at it in Greek and I thought, okay, you could interpret this a couple of
Yeah.
different ways.
Anyway, just throwing that possibility out there to, because it just seemed weird. Okay, we've talked about how Elijah was not received by that generation. And then I wanted to show how the events of chapter 17 illustrate Yeshua's reception, because I know that this Mount of Transfiguration and this demon that they couldn't cast out, you might not have seen any ties between those two, but you know what I like to do? Compare things and tie them together. And so we're going to do that. As the way he should have been received, Yeshua, a proper reception for the Son of God, contrasted with what actually happens. So let's take a look again at this, the issue, the Son and the Father, the Son who's demon possessed. And I've underlined some key little phrases that I want you to tuck away. Okay, as they come down, they come to a crowd of people. He says his son is struck by the moon. He says he often falls into the fire and often into the midst of the water, which is kind of a weird little thing. You're like, why did he say that? They ask him a question after this, okay? And then after his answer, he brings up this Son of Man. And this is almost, he doesn't do things random, but just reading through, it's like, why is this tacked on here? He's like, he talks about won't come out with prayer fasting, and then the Son of Man will ultimately be handed over to men. They'll kill him on the third day. He'll rise. And they got upset. And you think almost like we've moved on to a different section, but I kept it attached to this for a reason. his death is something else that they won't be able to fix. Him being crucified. Okay, there's nothing that they can do to prevent that. Let's look at the account in Mark of the same event. It describes it a little more vividly with the grinding teeth and saliva running down the kid's mouth. And at the end, when he tells it to get out, it says, it screamed greatly, the demon. It greatly crushed him, and it came out. And he, the kid, became like the dead, and many said, he has passed away. Yeshua grasped his hand and roused him, and he arose. Okay. Now let's go back and look at the Mount of Transfiguration. And I've underlined some key little things. One is they climbed the high mountain alone. Okay. In the story with the demon and the kid, they had come to a crowd of people. He was changed before their eyes. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became white as light. Moses and Elijah appeared. Okay, so let's look at what these stories, what kind of parallels are there between these two things. First of all, both stories have a father and a son. On the Mount of Transfiguration, it's the father and the son. In the other story, it's the father and his demon-possessed son. One father is pleased with his son. The other father is grieved by what his son is going through. One son is glorified, shining. The other is crushed nearly to death and then revived. Now, I said, I think the first event is how he should have been received. He should have been glorified. The second event illustrates what's actually going to happen. He's going to be crushed to death and revived. Yeshua. Okay, one son's face shines like the sun. The other son is struck by the moon. One son throws himself into the midst of the fire and the water, which was just puzzling me for the longest time. It's like,
Why?
Is there any tie to the Mount of Transfiguration? I'm picturing the Mount of Transfiguration. Okay, Yeshua, we got Moses, we got Elijah, Moses, Elijah.
And the Torah is likened to water, the spirit to fire. And Moses represents the law, and the Torah, and Elijah represents the spirit.
That is cool.
There's fire and water.
And Moses is the moon element.
And the Messiah is the thing that connects the Torah and the spirit.
Yeah.
Yep. And okay. So this fire and water thing. Fire and water. When fire and water are together, you got his presence there. Okay. The seventh plague is a special plague. You can look it up later. There's a few things that are unique about the seventh plague. It's the one with hail mixed with fire. Okay. Two things that do not get along in nature combined and sent down on them. And he says, he says, for this time, seventh plague, I will send all my plagues on you so that you will know there's no one like me in all the earth. And he uses the name in this particular plague, Adonai Elohim. Adonai is the name for mercy. Do I have that correct? Elohim is his name for justice. So mercy and justice together. Now we can know, it's easy to see the plagues, there's justice, bad Pharaoh. But how can we consider these plagues as being merciful? Have you ever seen the plagues as merciful? Have you ever considered that the plagues could be merciful?
If you try to get them to stop worshiping idols.
Yeah, God protects you in
Mercy
spite of all
to
that.
see the light and stop.
And in that plague in particular, he warned them in advance, get all of your people that you care
Yeah.
about and your animals out of your fields because they'll die.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Think about-
babies also.
Think about this. Why didn't he just come in and just boom, take care of it? Why a series of 10? Think about after the Egyptians have watched plagues 1 through 9, how many of them at this point are also putting the blood of a lamb on their door
Well, you know what?
and leaving?
That's a good question.
He's demonstrated his power. You have these people that are not Hebrew that are seeing his power and saying that is God and going with them out of the of Egypt.
Well, you know, since there was a big mixed multitude who left with the Israelites, how did they not die during the plague? A lot of them must have slaughtered lambs and put blood on their doors.
Yes.
You said what?
Wouldn't you after have seen
Only
them?
the firstborn will be killed.
Yeah.
So they could they may not obey.
I'm imagining that this word was going out through all of Egypt.
I
The
believe
Hebrews
it.
are slaughtering lambs and putting blood on their door. You know what? If I'm afraid of this God, I'm going to be
do the same
slaughtering
thing.
lamb and I'm going to be putting blood on my
Give me
door.
one of those.
Give me one of those.
Or they could have been also.
Or getting in their house. Yeah.
Or going into the house of an Israelite.
Yeah.
And protecting them, sure.
So you've got, I just pulled out a couple of other places where it talks about, God's presence is right there, and it mentions fire and water, like in Ezekiel. I found this picture online. I don't know if that's what it looks like, but I just thought I'd throw some visuals in there. He sees fire flashing forth continually. The sound of abundant waters, his voice sounds like water. In Revelation, from the throne proceeds flashes of fire. Before the throne, a sea of glass like crystal. It's water, still water. His eyes are like the flame of fire, voice like the sound of many waters. He's destroyed the earth, first time with water, second time with fire. John the Baptist comes baptizing in water. After the rejection, his father's house gets baptized in fire. Okay, let's look at the word for peace. We're going to have fun with Hebrew now. Okay, there's peace. Now, hold on, got a little crazy. Each Hebrew letter represents a sound, an idea, a number. Okay, here's a list of the Hebrew letters. This is Paleo Hebrew. It doesn't look like the Hebrew you might be used to seeing. Okay, when it was still like a picture language. This is the name of the letter, and those are the things it means. It has multiple meanings. So let's go back to shalom. Okay, that word that was up there, the word for peace. It starts with the shin, and the shin means fire. It even looks like fire with flames. It also means tooth. Like in paleo, it looks like two front teeth, like bunny teeth. What do teeth and fire have in common?
Devour.
They devour, they consume. Yes, okay. Shalom ends with mem, which means water. In between the fire and the water are the lamed, which looks like a shepherd's staff in paleo, and the vav. Okay? Those mean to bind or secure. So we have fire bound, secured with water, and we have peace. And he is the one that can bind those two opposites together, as we see in the descriptions of his presence. The name Hashem means the name. And here again we have fire and water together. When this Shem means name. When you put this at the front of a word, it's the definite article, the. That's why this says the name. Okay, this is also means breath, wind, or spirit. So I guess we could say he's the fire water, but not that kind of.
Maybe we'll talk about the word for heavens.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's Shamayim, which Mayim is water in Hebrew, and the fire, the sheen in front of it. So we've got the heavens, which is fire water, and then water beneath. So we've got the water above, heavens, fire water.
Fire water.
And the water beneath, just water.
Water.
Mayim.
Very cool. All right. Let's take this last little bit of Matthew. Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to say about the fire, water, anything else
I do.
before we? Okay, go
If you
ahead.
don't mind.
Yeah, we were going to move on to something else. So if you got something about the fire, water, say it.
Yeah, it's actually, I didn't know it related to this. I wanted to share this anyway, but it does, and it's pretty cool. So when he, on the Mount of Transfiguration, after they saw the vision, they were afraid and greatly terrified. And coming near Yahushua touched them and said, "Rise up and do not be afraid." And lifting their eyes, they didn't see anyone except him. And the way this described him is, and the vision, who's shone, his face shone, and that what I just read to you. And so I went back, it reminded me of a couple of things I read in scripture. In Daniel 10, 4 through 12, it says, this is when Daniel saw the vision, and it was of what I believe to be Messiah. Now on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire. So we've got the shining face, his arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. Remember that. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, so this is a vision for him as well. For the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great terror fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone when I saw this great vision, and no strength remained in me, for my vigor was turned to frailty in me, and I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words,
That's the sound of these words right there.
I was in such a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. Suddenly a hand touched me, just like we saw with Messiah and the disciples. A hand touched me, which made me tremble on my knees and on the palms of my hands. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright. So he told him to stand up. For now I have been sent to you. While he was speaking this word to me, I stood up trembling, and he said to me, do not fear, Daniel. For the first day you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come because of your words. Sounds almost exactly like what just happened with the disciples. And then this happens again in Revelation 1:8 and 12 through 17. I put them together here. It's Messiah saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, says the Lord, who is and who was and who is to come. So who is, I think this little thing with Messiah and the disciples, and who was, back with Daniel, who is to come in Revelation, the Almighty. Then I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet and girded about the chest in a golden band. His head and hair were like white wool, as white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. He's got that white shining face again, the fire. His feet were like fine brass, as it refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. So before in Daniel it was the sound of a multitude, his voice. Now it's the sound of many waters. So we've got the fire and the water connection. He had in his right hand 7 stars. Out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in its strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. But he laid his right hand on me, saying to me, do not be afraid, I am the first and the last.
Nicely done.
It's pretty awesome. I think that's pretty awesome.
Those are some great connections. I like that.
And then, like I was saying, with the menorah and the 7 feasts, and him standing in the midst of with the fire, and that's the fire in the middle, and he's in the midst of them. I just think that's, with the Torah on one side and the Moses and Elijah, and him being that spirit that communicates between the two. You have to have him in the middle. You don't have the connection.
Yeah, it's a great insight. All right, let's have this last little piece that it seems kind of strange, but I think we'll be able to tie this back to something from before. As they came to Capernaum, the collectors of the half shekel approached Peter and said, does your rabbi not give the half shekel? And he said, he'll give it. But when he came to the house, Yeshua came first to ask, saying, what's your opinion, Shimon, Peter? The kings of the earth, from whom do they take their taxes and customs? From their own children or from foreigners? Peter said to him, from foreigners? Yeshua said to him, if so, then the children are exempt. But nonetheless, in order that we will not be an obstacle to them, go to the sea, throw a fish hook into it, take the first fish that comes up. When you open its mouth, you will find an astir or shekel. Take it and pay on my behalf and yours. So, a couple things. First of all, what they've done here is, back in Exodus 30, they took atonement money for the service of the tabernacle. They took a half shekel for every person over 20 to pay for the service of the tabernacle. And so I think what's happened here is the Sadducees or Pharisees or whoever was running it, I'm not sure, kept that up to raise money. Yearly, they would pay this. And so the first question I have is, was that a correct application of his instruction in Exodus 30 to collect that half shekel? Was that a one-time deal? Was it wrong of them to keep doing it year after year?
Well, Yeshua seems to be implying that it is not.
Because of the Romans,
It's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Well, no, it doesn't seem to be Roman. It's the Sadducees who are in charge of the priesthood. I mean, that's where you get the word Sadducees from Zedakim. And they apparently are using this. It says that they're very wealthy in the scriptures many times, and I think that they're using any way that they can to make money. And Yeshua seems to be offended here by saying, you know, the kings of the earth, who do they take taxes from? Their own sons or foreigners? And so he seems to be saying here, we should not be paying this. This is
Because we are the children
we are the children
of the king.
Yeah, we're the children of the king. We shouldn't.
So again, we have fathers and sons here, or a father and his sons.
I didn't understand that there was a temple thing, like, because it
Yeah.
says Capernaum, so I didn't know if that was like outside of. I thought this was
Yeah,
like
it's in a
Gentile
different
thing.
area. I'm
Well,
not
so
sure if
it's
they
a
went
tax
throughout the
collector,
land and
no,
collected it.
So
I mean,
it's not like the Romans collecting taxes?
No, it's a
no,
temple
I don't
tax.
believe so.
That's
I
what I
think-
always thought. That was
Yeah.
You know, it
Um,
says, well, go back.
Sorry. That's your Exodus 30.
The collectors of the half shekel, I think that's why he's talking about sons or foreigners, is because if he was being taxed by the Romans, he'd have nothing to say about that.
Yeah,
He's not
that's why it
Roman.
didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so I think that these are this Zedakim who are going out into all the land to collect money for the temple, making sure that everybody's paying their temple tax. But frankly, you look at like what she was saying in Leviticus, there is really no temple tax. There's a tithe, but that's not in the form of a half shekel. The only time you can find a half shekel going on there is when they did it in Numbers.
Exodus 30.
In Exodus, excuse me, when they were basically ransom money for the children of the Leviim to pay for all the dead people in Egypt. And that's why they had the others counted besides that. But that's what I believe from that passage is he's saying, we should not be paying this, but we don't want them to they've got enough to stumble over. Let's not make an issue of it. Just go and throw a hook into the sea and get a shekel and pay it.
I think
That's why I'm going to the state of my tax guy.
Yeah.
go get it out of a fish.
Go get it out of it.
I think, when he says, nonetheless, they're wrong, he's right. But you don't find him going around and picking fights every time somebody's wrong, or he would be doing nothing
He's
but
subject to
correcting
ruling
people.
authorities. I think that's exactly
Yeah,
what he's doing.
I think, look for this. When he does get in an argument, it's never to prove he's right. It's more to rescue the poor people that are falling victim to the wrongness of someone else. So I thought that was a good lesson for us. That we don't have to hit it every single time. I was thinking when my kids were learning how to talk, and their grammar wasn't so good. If I had stopped them and corrected them, she's got a toy. She wants us to look at her toy. If I had stopped and corrected them every single time they'd made a grammar mistake, first of all, I wouldn't know what they were talking about. Second of all, they wouldn't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
So, you gotta go for the stuff that's beneficial. Let the other stuff kind of. We're not going to give offense. We're gonna do this. And he had something extra here that I think he was doing a little pearl for us to find. Okay, in Exodus 30, when he gives them the instruction to collect the half shekel to count them and that it's for the sanctuary, he uses this phrase: each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his life. The Hebrew word for life is nefesh, which is soul. Okay, so let's think about it as soul. Each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his soul. Okay, that word for his soul is this word right here. We're gonna have fun with Hebrew again one more time, and then we'll be done. Okay, it's nafsho. Okay, nefesh with an extra little doodad added on, so it's for his soul. So keep that in mind. That's why I kept it up there. Each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his soul. First letter is nun. Okay, we know each letter represents something. Noon, one of the meanings you can take from that is fish. It even looks like a fish jumping out of the water. So I put a fish there. Noon, fish. Okay. Next letter is pay, with without the dot, it's fe. Okay. Pay, it means mouth, word, or speak. So let's put a little mouth there. Let's skip shin for now because we already know it means fire. And go to the last letter, which is vav. Vav means nail, hook, to join together, tent peg, looks like a tent peg. Okay, if you put a vav onto the front of a word, it means and, so it hooks that with whatever was before. Okay, that's the whole idea behind that. So let's put a little hook there. And instead of making shin for fire, let's say shin is for shekel. Okay, so this for his soul word is a hook, a shekel, a mouth, and a fish. And so I was like, he's got this, I think he's got this sense of humor if you just look for it. And so yeah, each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his soul. Go to the sea, throw a fish hook into it, take the first fish, open its mouth, find the shekel. And this shekel is for them to share, Peter and Jesus. And this is where we get the idea that all the other disciples must have been under 20, because the half shekel was only charged to the two of them. And so we get the idea that Peter must have been the oldest, and he must have been 20 or older. So they share the shekel. And that's not all they shared. What happened to Yeshua also. How did Peter die?
Crucified upside down.
Okay. He shared in his manner of death too. And I think that right before we came into chapter 17, if you look at the very tail end of chapter 16, he said, a man who desires to follow me will disown himself, pick up his cross, follow me. For the one who desires to save his soul, it's the word for soul, his soul will be lost from him, but the one who loses his soul for my sake will find it. For what does it benefit a man if he should acquire the whole world but destroy his soul? Or what, and you're seeing that word everywhere if you look at this verse in Hebrew. Every time you see nafsho. Or what could the person give as ransom for his life? That's from the Exodus, ransom for his life. He just said that in chapter 16, leading right into the Transfiguration. So I think that what does sharing the shekel mean?
Sharing the ransom?
Disown yourself, pick up his cross, and follow him. Which Peter had to literally do, unfortunately. For us, it's just give up the rights to yourself. Doesn't mean deny yourself, like, I can't have soda anymore, I can't have beer anymore, and I can't go to the movies anymore. That's not, denying yourself stuff is not what he's saying. He's saying give up your right to yourself. You've come out of slavery, just like the Hebrews did when they came out of Egypt. What did they do? They were free for a few days, and then they became bondservants of someone else. So that was, does anybody have